Well, welcome back to another episode of Accountants Are Sexy. Changed my mind.
Hold on, I must be on the wrong podcast. Um, wow, neither an accountant or ever been described as sexy. So sorry, I'll just go there.
So, for those of you who are listening and not watching this, you
No, it's a better option. Honestly, just stick with listening. It's fine.
you might not know that the bloke I'm talking to is Phil Hobden. So, welcome to the show, Phil. You are in the right place. I will confirm you are in the right place.
Perfect. Good. It's a joke I always tell when I do. I announce for a sport called roller derby. Right, it's one of my hobbies. And one of the first jokes I always do is like, who's here to support this team? Who's here to support that team? And who's here because they walked in thinking it was Pilates and they've come to the wrong hall. There's always someone that goes, well, I don't actually know why I'm here. So yeah, that's just.
I tell you what, if they were expecting Pilates and they came in at a roller derby, they will be in for a shock.
It's definitely an education, right? I did a double header at the weekend. As you can tell, I can talk, right? It's a skill, talent, annoyance, whatever, to put it in the category you want. But I did a double header roller derby game for the first time since 2019 on Saturday, and it was like, or Sunday, sorry, and it was like 30 odd degrees in the sports hall. And I can honestly say, I don't think I've ever been so hot and had to entertain so many hot people. So yeah, not the most ideal, but it's such good fun.
Yeah, no, melting audiences are never the best audiences.
No, like you can see, like you have to, the more tired they get, the more over the top you have to get to kind of balance that energy.
Yeah.
And it gets to the point where like everyone's just like this.
Oh.
So I don't.
If you don't have ice creams, I don't want you talking to me.
Exactly. I found that there was a certain brand coffee shop in the reception that did a killer bubble tea. What was it? Blueberry bubble tea, and they did it with oat milk as well. So I was like in my element, and it was ice, and it was anyway. What were we here to do?
So, by the way, if you don't know Phil, prolific hipster.
Harsh but fair. You joke. This is no word of a lie. This is a VHS videotape that I've just literally pulled from my desk next to me. Okay. And I've got a stack of these and I'm currently converting them to digital. So you're absolutely right with the hipster thing. Because like I've got a load of these of stuff I made when I was a kid. And I found them and I'm converting them. So yeah, you're probably spot on with that.
That's actually amazing. And for those of you who don't know what a VHS is.
Yeah. That's a real pain, right?
I know.
Like I've got a 13-year-old daughter and I showed her a cassette tape not that long ago and she was like, where does that go?
Then you need to show her one of these. And this is one to Phil, is a pencil, because those two go hand in hand. You can't have one without the other.
You absolutely can't. I've spent many a time making a mix. See, everyone that has Spotify playlists, what you're really doing is making a cassette mixtape.
Yeah.
Back in the day, we all did. The difference is you don't have to stand there for the top 40 on BBC Radio 1 and press record and make sure you avoid the songs you don't want.
Then try and cut out as much of the DJ talking over the song as possible. Oh, those are the days, Phil.
Those were the days. You don't know how good you've got it these days, people.
But I'm not here to make young people feel bad about themselves for living their best lives. So, I want to talk to you about the accounting space. Now, Walters Cooler. It's so hard to say. Let's just cover that for a minute.
Walters Kluwer. There you go.
Walters Cooler. Why is that name so hard to say? Where does that name come from, first of all?
I think it's a Dutch name historically, so that's where the origins of the business is. But we're obviously historically publishing tech. You know, we're quite a broad umbrella company that has brought up various bits of technology globally, and now we're kind of one big brand. So in the UK, we've always been better known and much better known as CCH. You know, CCH is always the software that's been more attributed to us, but CCH is a part of Walters Kluwer, which is our overall brand. When I first joined just over a year ago, I struggled. We'll come on to this, but dyslexia and Walters Kluwer are not friends.
No.
So if you're slightly dyslexic, Walters Kluwer is something that you're just like. So I can now do it, but I lost count of how many emails that bounced back when I first started. So, but then I used to work for Futurely, so like that was another one where people would just go, "How do you spell that?" And the variant of that name that I
Too
had,
many
which I'm
T's and
definitely
I's and L's in the same, like, too many of them.
yeah. And there's versions that I definitely can't say on a podcast of what people called it, and you just go, yeah, go for your life, call it whatever you want, mate. It's fine.
That will do. So I mean, me having Dutch heritage, I should have known that, and I definitely do not. But yeah, that's a tough one for me. So you guys, like, as you say, it's massive, and you do so much. So could you just like tell, because you deal with so many different audiences as well, you're prolific with accounting, but why is that?
Yeah, so in the UK, we are one of the leading, if not the leading, supplier of kind of accounts production technology. So our CCH Central has been used by. Historically, we've sat very, very firmly in the top 100, top 250 space, but over the last 4 or 5 years, definitely expanded out much more across markets. And now we have people using us, accounting practices using us from big, some of the largest businesses in this industry to much smaller, to 1-2 man band type practices. So we've definitely expanded our reach. That's our core software, and for me, it's the software I have the least to do with because I work on the digital side. So my products are more the stuff that sits alongside that. So One-Click is a product, predominantly messages and documents and open integration DDR. Yeah, that sits alongside Central, so that gives you a hybrid ability to talk to your customers. So it's a plugged-in cloud to desktop software, effectively. But then I also work with Twinfield, which is our Dutch accounting software, which sits again probably I would say where some of the cloud softwares that currently are top out that you'd use with SMBs. That's maybe where you'd bring in a Twinfield. Yeah, those more complex clients, we sit very well in the franchising space, for example. And then I also work with a bit of software called FinSet, which is our forecasting and reporting tool, which we've just launched to the UK back in April, just before Accountex.
Amazing. There is so many words. I have no idea what they are in that.
We could dig into many of them, I'm sure, but the key thing, you know, is I get to deal with the more kind of digital side. So some of the more and some of the kind of products that I can't talk about that are coming down the pipe. Some of our more kind of new cloud products and some of that software that's being developed and getting ready to launch as we speak.
So when I was looking at your stuff and looking at the website and then looking at what you do, digital transformation is up there. So what I'm assuming is that you're not taking all of the VHSs from your libraries and then transferring. That's not the digital transformation you're talking about now.
That is not. I mean, that is digital transformation, right? I'm taking an analog product and making it digital, and actually, in a way, that's what we're doing at Wolters Kluwer. Like our accounts production tech, whilst not analog, it's server based. Right, it sits in the corner of the room, and that's what it is, and what I'm part of that journey to bring those products to the cloud from a sales perspective. Now, I'm not a product person. You know, you would not let me near a product; I'd break it 10 times over. A long track record of not doing that. But where I am is about kind of talking to our clients, leading them on that journey, and with my team helping clients integrate new bits of software. As we start to move over to some of our new products, we'll be leading that journey as well. So there's some really exciting stuff. Like the industry is really on the cusp, because obviously bookkeeping software went cloud a while ago, right? With Xero, QuickBooks, Sage, Free Agent, and the like. And you know that was good, and that was seen as a evolution of the accounting industry. The next evolution is that kind of move to cloud-based accounts production and that. It's a complicated journey for sure. But you know, I think that's that next evolution of cloud and you know, there's still no definitive kind of robust cloud accounts production software out there that can be used across the industry. There might be some bits that play in like the smaller end or thereabouts or hybrid technology, but I've always said, and I genuinely believe this, I think there's a really interesting philosophy from Apple that I've always loved, and that's you don't have to be first.
Yeah.
Right? A race to be first is great if you're doing a marathon or a 100-meter sprint, But when you're doing technology, quite often the people that bring stuff to market first are not the people that are around at the end.
No,
You
absolutely.
know, I watched a great film last week. I'm a big film fan. You can probably see from my office that like I've got a couple of movie posters and there's a car and other bits and pieces. And if you're listening to this on audio, there's also a picture of me with Brian Blessed over my shoulder.
Amazing.
Amazing. Big film geek. But I've completely forgotten the point I was trying to make now. God, I need to stop going off on tangents.
I'm loving it because I'm thinking like, oh yeah, I've got Star Wars stuff. I've got the Deloreon.
Yeah.
So I'm with you. But we were talking about the digital transformation, and we were talking about
being first. That's right. I watched a film called Blackberry. There we go. About BlackBerry and about the makers of what was an iconic bit of exactly right. And kids now are like, what's BlackBerry? Well,
it's a brilliant phone. It was a brilliant phone.
Yeah. It was the first phone to bring proper keyboard. It was a great enterprise product. I had one when I worked in banking because it was really secure. The iPhone came along and obliterated BlackBerry, right?
Which is really weird because when the first iPhone came out, it was rubbish. Like
I always say the exact same thing.
You couldn't take it out and use it in the rain. You were told, do not use this in the rain.
It also had 2G. It didn't have an app store because Steve Jobs initially didn't see the value in having apps, third-party apps on the phone. And it didn't have a load of functionality that it ultimately needed, right? But it did change the way people perceive phones, and it made phones quote unquote sexy. And it, Apple has become the dominant force in the market. Samsung, Google, kind of there or there, lower, but I would argue that the Apple.
I'm a Samsung person, and Apple use like the components from Samsung, so obviously better.
Exactly right. But it's like Apple have never been the first to market.
No, they haven't.
Comically, anyone that's watching on the video there may notice that I just accidentally hit the press button on my chair and just shrunk off screen.
I'm inviting you back again. I can already tell.
Really? Normally this is enough to put people off. But like Apple were never first to market. They didn't bring out the first computer. They didn't bring out the first phone. They didn't bring out the first tablet. They didn't bring out the first VR headset or AR headset or whatever. But when they do it, they bring an elevated version of it, and I think that's the lesson that a lot of tech businesses can do, and I think a lot of lessons that accountants can take from that is, yes, being first is sometimes great, but being first isn't always the best solution.
From a sales perspective, it's proof of concept. So when somebody's out to market first, they're proving the concept. They get the early adopters in, there's a load of problems, people realise what the problems are, the second iteration comes in, and they fix the problems, they make their customers happier, and the journey continues around the arch until the idea is old and spent. And I think that's the kind of journey that most people go on. What accountants need to realise is that they can still serve their clients at a better level than other people.
Absolutely.
We are still on that curve of going up. We haven't reached the highest level of service yet.
What I love about accountants and the accountancy market is, and I genuinely believe this, that tech should be a facilitator to help you do what you do. And if you're spending more time implementing technology than you are servicing your clients, then the balance is wrong. And if you're implementing technology for the sake of it, then the balance is wrong. I think what I've learned over the past 9 years in this space for me is that there is a growing reticence to be an early adopter now. Because there's a lot of early apps, there's a lot of apps that have launched over the past 2 or 3 years that have come and gone in that space, and some before. And I've had competitors that have come and gone, and friends that have set up apps that have come and gone. And the challenge is, if you invest your time and effort and money into that tech, then if they're not there in 6 months' time, you've got to do that journey again. So, and a few people have been burnt. And I did an article for a blog that I write for Engage Sales, and I was talking about this exact thing, right? That there needs to be greater due diligence, and rather than being tempted by the shiny water bottle or the great bit of swag or have it for $5 or for 10 years. Yeah. That's great, but actually, is that software going to be there in 2 years? And if it is going to be there, is the runway being developed correctly, or is it like, oh, we've run out of money, let's just polish the edges and make it look? Because I've worked for those businesses, right? And the challenge comes that if it suits your needs now, but it doesn't evolve, then that bit of technology gets old pretty quick. It's a BlackBerry, right? Like, it was new and it was great, and then it wasn't, and then it went in a drawer, and now it's on eBay.
Yeah. Yeah, and I know people that loved it. They absolutely adored their BlackBerry. They wouldn't go anywhere without it. It had a QWERTY keyboard, didn't it? Like, it was
Proper
like
QWERTY
it was
keyboard.
proper. And yeah, absolutely. Like, Apple just smashed them to pieces with an inadequate piece of equipment, which is really weird when we think back.
Marketing, right? It shows what I think Apple always shows the power of marketing. Yeah, marketing, positioning, and awareness of your audience, right?
Yeah.
Like, if you make something that's just a bit more expensive than it should be, and you create a FOMO around it, like, and Apple have always been great about that. Like the iPod, sorry, when it first launched, was an expensive bit of kit that probably was a bit over the top for what was needed, but they marketed it really well. Those really cool adverts with the silhouettes with the white headphones and the AirPod, right? Fantastic piece of marketing. And they made it desirable. Was it the best bit of kit on the market? Actually, probably the iPod was. Actually, the one time that I think it's... Yeah.
Definitely better than a portable CD player. That's
oh my God. Sure. I was talking to someone about this the other day. I used to do 6-hour trips to go back to university back in the day. And I was like, and my wife was, I think it was my daughter. She's like, well, what did you watch? What did you do? I said, well, all I could do was take my CD player, my portable CD player, a bundle of CDs, and about 180 AA batteries, because they barely last like half an hour. Yeah. And that was like the journey every time, right? So yeah, the AirPod revolutionised that.
We should have gone back to tapes at that point.
Yeah, it's strange. It was like CDs were good for some things, but like story, it was a bit of a. But so I think there is a danger to early adoption. I think there's a danger to rushing to be first in the market, and I think there's a danger in adopting first in the market. And actually, if you've got something that works, great. That's a good thing. Don't always go for the shiny thing that claims to do X, Y, and Z.
I think that we're in a phase at the moment where accountants are feeling fatigued with software. So there is another player in the market. There's another one. There's this, there's that, and they're feeling fatigued because they get sold to, they get promised the world, or they get promised the earth, and then they have to implement it. And at the implementation stage, they think, well, actually, yes, it does X, Y, and Z, but it doesn't do X, Y, P, Q, and T, or whatever it is, and that's what we need it for. So I think there is, because of this massive digital transformation in the industry, we're now at a point where they're like, oh God, stop selling to me. And they need to understand what problems it fixes more concisely, potentially, before they invest.
Yeah, and I think sometimes one of the things that I always find frustrating is when where you get someone that goes, we want to go in this direction, and then the provider they're with goes, oh well, we'll cut your bill by half. So the person goes, oh, do you know what? I'm going to stay with that provider, and it's like, if you're, and I know money is important, and I say this, we're in a cost of living and a cost of doing business crisis, right? It's not just a cost of living crisis, it's a cost of doing business crisis.
100%.
Like, small businesses are struggling. Yeah. And whilst accountancy is a market that is robust in those tougher times because the services are needed, the added value services around that time really need to prove value. So for me, money is important, but if you're only staying or going somewhere based on financial reasons, you need to just take a step back and go, is this really the right move? So like, if I was moving from BlackBerry to Apple, the cost would be significant. If BlackBerry then turned around and went, oh, well, I'll give you a phone for free and you can have it for 2 years, I go, okay, cool, I'll keep that phone. Yeah. The technology isn't suitable for what I need. I can't put apps on it. I can't do Facebook on it or whatever it was. But because I'm keeping it because it's cheaper, I then sacrifice the
There's
experience.
an inadequate experience in the
Yeah,
customer
yeah, yeah.
service.
And I think so. That's the flip side to it. Is we need to be really robust on why we're moving and why people are having those conversations with us. So as someone that leads a sales team, for me, it's kind of, I always describe it as finding the pain, right? You need to find the pain. Pain is not necessarily time.
Yeah. And
Okay.
pain is not necessarily a bad thing either. People view it weirdly. They think
No.
pain equals bad. Pain could be we're scaling and it's really
Yeah.
exciting, but there are pains in the company. There's lots we
Absolutely.
need to fix.
The scaling thing is a huge pain. Like I've been in businesses that have scaled from 30 employees to 100, and that comes with it such unbelievable challenges. Like unbelievable challenges in everything from HR. You have to have an HR department. To whatever. So pain is you're absolutely right. Pain is not necessarily a bad thing, but if you can't define a pain, then you can't sell that product to someone, or you can't implement that product, or you can't, because if you're doing it for oh, I need to save some time. Time's not a pain. Time is a symptom.
Yeah.
Time is a symptom of I don't have enough staff. I can't. So I need. So for example, it could be we're growing. I don't have enough time to implement the software. Well, okay. So what's behind that? Well, actually, we don't have enough staff to do this, or X, Y, or Z. And actually, okay. So why aren't you recruiting? Well, we've got to do this. And okay. So ultimately, your pain of why you're not implementing your software might be that you don't have a robust HR function that can manage that recruitment process. Therefore, you're going, oh, I don't want to do that because recruiting is scary and fraught with issues, etc., etc., etc. So I think it's really understanding as a business. And by the way, this is your clients as well. As an accountant, it's your clients as well. They have pain, and if you can serve, going back to your point about being overwhelmed with technology, you should only be implementing using technology that solves the pain of either your firm or your clients. And if you haven't defined what pain your clients are having because you're not talking to them on a regular basis, then you're just asking them to implement another bit of technology that sits on their phone, like
This is a really, really good point.
the 500 apps we've all got.
So I am currently in the midst. By the time this comes out, I won't be in the midst. But if you want access to it, please just drop me a message and we can get you access. But I'm in the midst of delivering impact webinars. So this is talking to people about services. We've got Deloreon, we've got Taxstone, we've got other people coming on as well. But talking about it as in, how does this solve the problems of your clients? Because when an accountant implements a piece of software and they put it into their practice, they say, well, it's going to reduce our overheads, it's going to reduce the time that we have to take to do this particular process, it's going to improve communication within the team. That's really internal.
Yeah.
All of that is internal stuff. What I'm trying to do is say, well, actually, when you implement this software, what does it do for your clients? Because as soon as you've got that in your head, you can say it's justified. I'm confident with my pricing because I know this. We're delivering an exceptional service. I'm confident in like where this company is going because I know that we can scale with ease because it's fixing the problems of my clients and we're not going to experience these pains. But if you don't know what those pains are, then you're not going to feel confident. It's just going to be we're now like with
HubSpot.
No, it's not HubSpot. It's
HubDoc.
HubDoc. Thank you.
Lots of hubs. Sometimes.
Yeah, too many hubs in my world. But if you're just passing on costs, then that's a whole different ball game, and you're going to feel awkward about that. And when it comes around to repricing them or giving them software, the conversation is different. So what pain is it taking away?
You should never sell software to your clients, right? If you are selling software to your clients, then I guess the challenge will become, well, why do I need it? Why? I don't need another bit of software. No, thank you. I don't need another cost.
Absolutely.
No, thank you. It's actually, how is this going to make your life easier, save you time, save me time, and thus save you money?
Yeah.
And then if you can say, well, implementing this could potentially say, like Dex Receipt Bank was the perfect example of this,
That's
right?
nice, yeah.
You implement Dex in your business and you're scanning receipts at point of application. So you get the receipt, you scan it, it goes on.
Yeah.
Now, when it comes to doing your bookkeeping, all of those receipts are already in the system. Therefore, you don't need to bring in a bag of receipts. I don't need to sit there and put them through the system. And therefore, your bookkeeping bill will be less because there is less manual paperwork for me to do it. So there's a benefit for the accountant. There's a benefit for the client. That's a win-win for me.
Yeah.
That's why it was such a good bit of software.
Absolutely. But when the accountant is just thinking, this is an additional cost I'm going to have to pass on, and they don't communicate the benefits of that, then that all falls to pieces, and it just puts added pressure on the accountant.
Yeah, and I think that's quite the problem, right? Like they see it as, well, actually it's going to reduce the amount we can charge. Not really. What it's going to do is it's going to free you up to do higher value work with your other clients, because you're not sat there for 18 hours a month putting receipts through a system which you just don't need to do. You can actually, you could do that 18 hours, whatever it is, you could do 2 or 3 forecasts for a client, or you could do an application to help them with funding or R&D or something like that, which is going to, all of the good stuff that's actually going to change your client rather than, and this is that move from what I call transactional accounting to kind of client-led accounting.
Yeah.
Like,
so I would call it transformational accounting. So taking a client from one place and then helping them get to another. You can't do that without knowing your clients. That's the first thing I would say. But it's actually understanding the process of that transformation as well.
100%. I mean, how many genuinely accountants can go into a CRM and say, this is what my client is trying to achieve, this is what my client's pain is, and this is how I can support them.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing maybe a lot of the smaller accountants, like, you know, I bet if I asked Rachel at Strivex, right, that she'd probably know every one of her clients exactly what she needs.
All
exactly
701 of them, probably.
701 of them. And probably that team does know every single one of those clients and what they're doing, right? And I think that's the credit to why that business is growing so much, because of that, right? Other firms maybe not. And I think that's where the industry should be going to, and it's still not there, and it still won't be there in 5 years' time, by the way, where the majority of people are doing it. But like the iPhone and the functionality, it becomes a reassuringly expensive. I'd rather be with someone that could grow and help my business than someone says, oh, it's going to cost you 25 quid, we won't speak, but just chuck me an email every now and then and that's it. And I'll be like, okay.
This is brilliant stuff. There's so much more I could talk to you about this. Like, we could talk about this for hours, but I want to bring you on to one of the reasons why I invited you to the podcast. Because neurodiversity is a massive subject at the moment. Massive subject on TikTok, on Instagram Reels, so misunderstood. But there is a lot of information flying about. And one of the hashtags that you use is dyslexic thinking. And I just wondered, what's your journey been, and kind of why is this important?
Yeah, I was a bright but somewhat unguided kid, right? Like, so I had some.
You just read out my school report.
My school report was much worse than that. But I think one of the things that I've come to realize in later life, that like I took my GCSE for English 3 times. I failed it. I got a D. Got a D the second time. Third time I got a C. By that point, I didn't need a C. I'd already got a place at university. It wasn't important, but it was something I needed to do for myself. And I came to realize kind of years later that I was at least partly dyslexic. People go, oh, how can you be partly? You either are or you aren't. And I think it's a scale, right? I think like a lot of neurodiversity, I think dyslexia is a scale. You can be completely dyslexic and really struggle, or you can struggle with certain things. For me, it's like, if I have to make a snap left or right, if you said to me, which direction are we going? And I look at it and in my head I'll go, I know it's right, but I'll go left. And because my brain just goes, and sometimes I'll write a post on LinkedIn and it'll be great. And then I'll go back and read it a minute later and I'll be like, whoa, I'm not quite sure what that was meant to be about. But it shows itself in very...
I'm laughing because I can hear it in myself, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely, right. And it shows itself in very small moments.
Yeah.
So it's not me being completely, I can read quite well, very well. I can write content well. I just sometimes get muddled with words and spellings and stuff. But for me, I think the dyslexic thinking hashtag came from something that Richard Branson did on LinkedIn a couple of years ago. There's a whole campaign about it, and it was about highlighting dyslexia as a positive rather than a negative, and it was the first time I'd ever talked about it. I did an article about being dyslexic, and it was one of the biggest articles I ever wrote on LinkedIn. And it's the first time I'd ever really spoken about it, and I kind of, it was kind of like, my dyslexic coming out almost. It was something I'd hidden for so many years because I was not embarrassed, but it was like just something that just wasn't really something I spoke about. And then other people came to me and like I had a good conversation with my nephew who is dyslexic, and he was struggling at school at the time, and I was like, look, being dyslexic doesn't stop you from being successful, right? Like I've got to whatever point, be it successful or not, however you want to define success is so emotive, but I've got to, and subjective, but I've got to a position in my career, and sales leader, so, and being dyslexic hasn't hurt that journey, maybe apart from a couple of random job interviews or applications where I might have just put something completely wrong, rather than Mac I put cow or something, I don't know. But I thought it was something that was really important to highlight, because I don't think dyslexia as a form of kind of neurodiversity gets as much publicity and discussion as others, and I think it is a really valid thing that more people struggle with. And it's one of those things that's mocked quite easily. Oh, Phil can't spell. Phil can't write a sentence without getting the word. And you go through life and you just go, oh yeah, I can't spell. I'm rubbish at left or right and things like that. But you realise actually there are some people that probably do think it's going to hold them back, and some people that probably do think it's a negative. And actually, I think neurodiversity in any shape or form is fantastic. Like every team should be made up of people from different socioeconomic groups. I think, by the way, I think that's the other one.
Diversity in general, not just neurodiversity, but diversity is a good thing.
We focus really well on diversity in this. Well, I think we've come so far in this country with diversity and inclusion, and we've still got a long way to go. I did a podcast with my podcast co-host Ollie about pride, and he was talking about being a gay man within the industry and a gay man within and his experiences and how far we've come, but how far we've still got to go. Really interesting podcast, by the way. Not wanting to plug anything, but that's a really good one to listen to, because Ollie talks so genuinely, honestly about it. But I think the one thing we've not nailed in this country, particularly at diversity, is we don't necessarily look at socioeconomic diversity. And I think that's really important, because let's be honest, I can put hashtag dyslexic thinking on mine, and people could put hashtag neurodiverse, but how many people put hashtag council estate kid? And that's me, by the way. I was also a council estate kid.
Brad Burton.
Yeah, apart from Brad Burton, like we're soulmates in that regards, right? But like it's true, right? I grew up on a very I say this now, by the way, I'm going to drop a town name, and anyone that knows the area will go, but that's really posh and expensive. So I grew up in Lewes, in East Sussex, which now is considered to be really posh and really expensive.
Gentrification.
Gentrification is horrid. When I grew up there, it was 3 really dodgy council estates, surrounded by some rubbish town centres and far too many pubs for the amount of people in the town. It's changed over the years, but back in the day, where I grew up was very impoverished, and my parents, my dad worked 3 jobs, etc., right? Very working class. I was the first person, probably still am, in my entire family to go to university. So I think neurodiversity is important, and I genuinely do, and I think dyslexic thinking is a great way to get people to think about having other people in your team. I think we need to go a step further as well and consider more. Look at politics, right? Like, I don't want to get political, but I was talking about this with someone last night, and you've got 2 potential prime ministers for this country, separated. One's Labour, one's Conservative, but they're both from the same kind of economic background. Like the one on the left also went to private school, as did the one on the right. Right? Like, so neither are really that representative of the people that they are there to represent. And
we don't like it when they are, so
that's a challenge. Yeah, and that is a challenge. And I think there is a degree of that. But I think, when you're looking at building an ideal team, you should consider race and ethnicity. You should consider gender and gender identity. You should consider neurodiversity, and you should consider social economic as well, because there's nothing worse than and I've worked in banking, right? So there's a lot of that in there. There's nothing worse than having a room full of people that you feel economically inferior to just because of where you grew up or what university you went to. And that's a really weird one, because it's not an easy thing to address. But again, I think as a country, we are so much better on so many different fronts than other people. There are other countries you look at and go, glad we're not them. So I think all of this thing, however we highlight our unique identities, differences, maybe you could say, but like unique qualities. Yeah. I think it's a good thing. So I'd love someone to do hashtag council estate kid. That'd be a great one. Let's get that hashtag started, right? Like I'm on that train. Hashtag council estate kid.
I probably won't be using it, I will admit. But yes, I also grew up on a council estate in Edgware. So I think, and especially going back to, I don't know how old you are. I guess you're like at least 27.
At least 27. Yeah.
But going back to when. Well, I would say that I'm 43, so going back to when I was a kid, like everywhere was a council estate in my eyes. Everywhere.
Yeah.
Council housing was so, there was loads of it. Not so much anymore.
Not so much anymore. And I think there was a degree of stigma about it when I I always tell a great story, and I won't bore you with too long, but one of the things something that happened a couple of months ago is I bought myself a pair of Nike Air Jordan trainers. Why did I buy myself a pair of Nike Air Jordan trainers? Because I've always wanted a pair, and I wanted a pair since I was a kid. And the last 10 years of my life, I've bought a motorbike, got tattoos. People might call it a midlife crisis. I mean, I think that's somewhat underplaying thoroughly enjoyable, right? I've took up roller derby. I've done all this mad stuff. But it comes back to when I was a kid, that I was the kid that could never afford the latest trainers or the latest clothes or stuff like that. My parents just couldn't. One day, my dad got me a pair of Nike Air Jordans. And I was ecstatic, right? I was so happy. I finally had the trainers that every other kid in the school had. And I was no longer mocked for having the rubbish, Puma trainers as they were back then, or whatever it was, right? Much better value now. But I also remember that they didn't last very long and they fell apart. And I thought it was quite unusual for Nikes. And I was telling this story to my wife about 9 months ago when we were having dinner with some friends. And my wife just turned around and said, "You realise that they were probably fake, right?" And I was like, "Oh no, I've gone 30, so I'm 46. I've gone 32 years not realising that my dad actually probably got some knocked off Jordan trainers off the market, and that's why they fell apart." Aww. And I was like, for all my life, I was like, that's probably the best thing he ever bought for me. Yeah. Then all of a sudden I realised, oh no, they were probably fake.
But you still love them.
And that's why they fell apart. I still love them, yeah. But that's why I was like, right, I'm going to go out and get myself a new pair. That's being a council estate kid, is realising that the Jordans you had were probably knocked off, and that's why they fell apart after a couple of months.
That's amazing. I want to make 2 points, because we ran out of time a while ago, but I want to make...
sorry.
That's okay, because I've really enjoyed this. One of them is, I think, someone that's leading the way in leadership for social economic and all other areas of diversity is Heather Elkington. So
yes, fantastic.
If you are not watching what she's doing, she is leading in her own way, and I fully love watching her journey. So,
by the way, on her, I get her newsletter, and every newsletter she sends out, there's something in there that I go, I need to do that.
Yeah, it's absolutely
brilliant. Really rate what she's putting out. I think it's fantastic, and as someone that, and I think whatever you're doing in life, you never stop learning. Being an accountant, being a leader, being whatever. I always say that if I ever claim to be the finished article, it's probably because I'm dead and I can't learn anything else. Up until that point, life is a journey of education and honing what you do.
There's a difference between I'm the finished article and I am done now.
Yeah, exactly that, right? Like, I
Right.
completely agree.
There is one final question that I ask all my guests at the end of the episode. So, if you could please tell me, what is the sexiest thing about accountants?
Oh, don't know if it's accountants, but maybe accountancy. As in general, I remember like everyone telling me so I joined the industry about 2 months before a Xerocon, and everyone was telling me, "Oh, Xerocon's amazing. It's like the Glastonbury for accountants." Yada yada yada. Of course, I went in. I was like, "Yeah,
Whatever.
right. Yeah, whatever. It's accountancy. How can it possibly be that?" And do you know what? During the day, I was like, "Yeah, it's pretty cool, right? Like people are in shorts and t-shirts and stuff, and it's like
Was it
it's
the one with
pretty
the zip
cool."
wire?
It wasn't. It was the one before. I think it was maybe two before that. And I was like, okay, this is pretty cool. And then it got to the evening, and my God, I'd never seen anything like it. Like it was insane. It was like the party of all parties, and I was like, accountancy and therefore accountants are actually it's quite a sexy industry, right? And it's like it's quite a cool industry. And one of the things that I've seen over the years of doing this is exactly that, right? Like this is a far cooler industry, a far sexier industry than anyone gives it credit for. And
100%.
accountants really know. Like I've partied some parties in my time, not so much anymore, but I've partied some parties in my time, and I'd put a couple of my Xerocon experiences above and beyond some of the warehouse raves that I've been to in the 90s. Where everyone's standing around with glow sticks and foam and t-shirts off and stuff, right? Like, as to paraphrase S Club 7, there ain't no party like an accountant's party. Um,
I think I have a sneaking suspicion that Pete said that as well. Oh, blimey. Peter
damn, I'm gonna
from Practice Ignition.
damn, I'm gonna have to come up with something. Pete Marlowe.
Yeah, that's it.
Do you know what? Here's a funny story. I gave Pete Marlowe his break in the industry. I employed him at Futurely.
Ah,
So he was one of my hires when I was leading the team at Futurely, and I've introduced him to Practice Ignition as well when he was looking for another role. So Pete is someone that I think has done a fantastic job. He's such a great guy, and he's done really really good job with the businesses he's worked for. So yeah, although I'm gonna have to say that he stole that from me. I don't know if that's true, but I'm gonna claim it.
but you're going to claim it anyway.
Yeah.
Well, you two can have a who claimed S Club 7 off, if you wish.
Probably a sentence that has never been uttered in the history of any podcast ever.
Yeah, I really, honestly, I didn't know where this podcast was going to go, but it's been an absolute joy and a pleasure to speak to you. So thanks ever so much.
My pleasure. Thank you.